clause has its individual meaning. We will see and we will elaborate this point in detail. We need to see the formulation of this sentence. The formulation goes like this. First is a main clause plus there is a subordinate clause. Now we need to understand what do we mean by main clause and subordinate clause. When there are two clauses to which we will call a main clause and to which we will call a subordinate clause. First we will see the definition of main clause. The definition of main clause goes like this. Main clause has its own individual meaning. Therefore, it can stand on its own. Very interesting thing. I would rather start from the very beginning, as I was telling you that these types of sentences are very important to understand. Because if you know the simple sentence, then only you can move on with the compound sentence. If you know the compound sentence, then only you can move on with the complex sentence. So here in the complex sentence, the main clause is something that first of all has its own individual meaning. It does not depend on any other clause, or it does not depend on any other part of a sentence. If you remove the subordinate clause, then also main clause has its own individual meaning. So the first thing we need to understand is this. Second is, what do we mean by subordinate clause? Quite opposite to the main clause, subordinate clause depends on the main clause. It means it does not have its own individual meaning. If you just speak subordinate clause, it will not have its own individual meaning. It will be incomplete. It will need the help of the main clause. Without main clause, subordinate clause will not stand, or it will not be able to give you the full meaning. Here again you can see the definitions of main clause and subordinate clause. Now these are several examples. As you can see in the first column, there are given the complex sentences, and in the second and the third, I have broken the sentence into two parts, or rather you can say that I have fragmented them into two parts. I would request all my students and the viewers and the listeners to pay attention to these sentences. The first sentence is, I get up when it is 7 o'clock. In this sentence, there are two clauses. Main clause with individual meaning is I get up, and subordinate clause that depends on the main clause in this sentence is when it is 7 o'clock. As I said earlier, that if you just say I get up, it has its meaning. It does not require the subordinate clause. But the subordinate clause, it is when it is 7 o'clock. When you say when it is 7 o'clock, first and foremost thing you need to understand that it is not an interrogative sentence. It is not an interrogative sentence. It is an assertive sentence, because soon after when it comes it, that is actually the subject. So here when we say when it is 7 o'clock, it does not have its individual meaning. When it is 7 o'clock, then what? The answer is I get up. So the full sentence becomes I get up when it is 7 o'clock. Interestingly, there is no need that main clause will come first and subordinate clause will come later. You can also say when it is 7 o'clock, I get up. But when you write the sentence, you have to put a comma. In the second sentence, as you can see, she knows the boy whom you are asking about. In this sentence also, she knows the boy is a main clause that has its own individual meaning. But the subordinate clause, whom you are asking about, is a subordinate clause that does not have its own individual meaning. It means that the subordinate clause, when you are asking about, requires the main clause to give its full meaning. Third sentence, The engineer whose work you like is my brother. The main part, or you can say the principal clause or the main clause of this sentence is the engineer is my brother. That has its own individual and full meaning. Whose work you like is a subordinate clause. In the second sentence or in the next sentence, you can see I know the place which you talked about. Again, in this clause or in this sentence, I know the place is a main clause, which you talked about is a subordinate clause. These are several examples. Again, the second interesting thing or very useful thing I would say in these examples is the use of several connectors like when, whom, whose and which. Actually, all these connectors, when, whom, whose and which, they refer to something in the main clause. As you can see, the first sentence, when it is 7 o'clock, I get up. Grammatically, it is called adverb clause of time. So, this is entire clause that is playing a part of adverb. As we know the definition of adverb, that adverb is actually a word that adds something in the meaning of verb or action. But here there is not only one word, there is a full clause. It is 7 o'clock. So there is a full clause joined by the conjunction or a connector when, and that entire clause adds something in the meaning of action, and the action is getting up. So simply we can say that this is an adverb clause of time. In the second sentence, as you can see, she knows the boy whom you are asking about. So in the second sentence, the word whom is actually referring to one person, and the person is the boy. So the whom connector is also referring to someone in the main clause. In every complex sentence, this connector will refer to someone or something that we will see in the next slide also. But before that, let us have some more example. As you can see in the last sentence, I know the place which you are talking about. So again, in the subordinate clause, there is a connector that is which, and that refers to the place, means the noun, the place. I know the place which you are talking about. Some more examples of the connectors where, when and why. As we can simply understand that the word where refers to the name of a place, the word when refers to the name of or the noun or the word that showing time, and again in the last the word why refers to the reason. This is the school where my father is working as a teacher. This is the school is a main clause. Where my father is working as a clerk is a subordinate clause. As you can see, this is the school. Separately it has its own meaning. If it stands alone, then also it has its meaning. But the sentence where my father is working as a clerk, it does not have its own individual separate meaning. It needs the help of a main clause. What was the date when Gandhiji was assassinated? Again, in this interrogative sentence, what was the date is a separate question. It has its own meaning, but the subordinate clause, that is when Gandhiji was assassinated, it does not have its own individual meaning. Last sentence, I don't know why he is absent today. Adverb clause of reason. In that sentence, I don't know is a main clause. When he is absent today is a subordinate clause. A dependent clause may refer to a noun or pronoun in the main clause and may be joined with the main clause by such connectors as who, which, whom, whose, and etc. As I said in the previous slide also, explaining the previous slide also, that in the subordinate clause, these are the connectors, who, which, whose and whom. But we need to understand, and it is very important, that all these connectors are referring to something or someone. That something or someone can be given a name of can be given a name as a noun also. They can be identified as pronoun also. That we will see in several other examples given in the next slide. But before that, we need to understand that the connectors are referring to what and whom. As you can see in the first column and a row, there is a connector who. Who refers to human being. That name of a human being can be noun or it can be pronoun. It can be common noun, it can be proper noun, it can be pronoun also. The second is whom. The connector whom also refers to human being, and that human being can be given a noun, can be given a name as a noun, or it can be given a name of a pronoun. The second connector is whose. It also refers to human being. That name of the human being can be noun, it can be pronoun. Which, as you can see that the connector which, it stands a little apart or an out, or you can see that which is a connector that refers to either object or bird or animal or insect. All these things or objects means inanimate things, non-living things, they can be given noun, or living things, bird, animals, they can also given a name or as a noun, or they can be given a name of or like pronoun. There are three other connectors where that refers to place. The name of the place that will be in the main clause. The connector when that rests in the subordinate clause, it will refer to time. The word related to time, there will be in the main clause again. And the last connector, that is why, it will refer to reason. The word showing reason, that will rest in the main clause. Now let us move on with some concrete and very elaborated examples. As you can see in several tables, in several rows, in the first column you can see there is a connector. That connector will be resting in subordinate clause. That connector will refer to human being. Now let us move on with clause number 1. Clause number 1 is the Gitanjali was written by Rabindranath Tagore. There is a sentence. It is a simple sentence. One subject, one predicate. And it is in passive voice form. Clause number 2. He was a great painter. I have put the word he in bold fonts. And I have also put the name of Rabindranath Tagore, that is actually proper noun, in also bold fonts. Now, when you synthesize these two sentences, when you connect these two sentences using the connector who, the sentence will become like, the Gitanjali was written by Rabindranath Tagore, who was a great painter. In this sentence, the Gitanjali was written by Rabindranath Tagore. It is actually in a passive form, is a main clause that has its own individual meaning. Who was a great painter is a subordinate clause. This is the first thing we need to understand, that who was a great painter, it does not have its own individual meaning. Second important thing is that the connector who is used actually for Rabindranath Tagore. That's why I have shown you that the word or the connector who refers to human being. Here in the sentence, Rabindranath Tagore. Please understand the sentence. I think the next example will also elaborate and will also explain this thing in a clear-cut way. The clause number 1 is the girl is my neighbor. Clause number 2 is she is in a red sari. The sentence, the complex sentence becomes like this: the girl who is in a red sari is my neighbor. So here the entire clause, who is in a red sari, is becoming adjective clause because it adds something in the meaning of noun, and the noun is the girl. So here the pronoun who again refers to someone, and that someone is the girl. So the girl who is in a red sari is my neighbor. Say for instance, if there are 2-3 girls standing somewhere else, and out of these 2-3 girls, only one girl is wearing a red sari. So I can identify that particular girl using this sentence, that there are 2-3 girls, but out of those 2-3 girls, the girl who is wearing or who is in a red sari is my sister. So like this, in this sentence also, the connector who is talking about the proper person and the proper, you can say, reference, and that reference is nothing but the noun, the common noun, the girl. Let us move on with the next slide that talks about whom. Clause number 1 is the Gitanjali was written by Rabindranath Tagore. Clause number 2 is Gandhiji called him Gurudev. Clause number 1, Rabindranath Tagore is a proper noun. In the clause number 2, Gandhiji called him. So here him is actually objective inflection. There are 3 types of inflections, as you can see: subjective inflection, objective inflection, and possessive inflection. Like you can say I is a subjective inflection, me is objective inflection, and my is possessive inflection. I, me, my. We, us, our. So we is a subjective inflection, us is objective inflection, and our is possessive inflections. Like this, in this clause also you can see that Gandhiji called him. So him is a objective inflection. In clause number 1, Gitanjali was written by Rabindranath Tagore. It is a passive form. So following the rules of passive voice, here Rabindranath Tagore is used as an object. Actually he is the subject of a sentence. That if we say Gandhiji wrote Gitanjali, its passive form is the Gitanjali was written by Rabindranath Tagore. The sentence becomes like the Gitanjali was written by Rabindranath Tagore, whom Gandhiji called Gurudev. So now you can see that from the second clause, number 2, him has disappeared. Instead of him, now we refer the noun Rabindranath Tagore using whom. So this is the use of whom. Second example of whom. Here in the sentence, clause number 1 is I know the person. So person is in bold form, as you can see. Clause number 2 is the principal was scolding him. Again, him is objective inflection. And in clause number 1, I know the person. Person is an object. Sentence is I know the person